Organized money.
Big fan, big fan.
Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button so that more people can get exposed to organized money. Really appreciate it. Dave and I were at an event on earlier this week, which is September 15th and 16th. We were at an Antimonopoly conference with a bunch of people who came and spoke about monopolies, including former FTC chair Lina Khan, Senator Chris Murphy, and a whole bunch of other politicians. And we wanted to get their views on a range of things, including media consolidation. And then the day after, or I don't know, day or two after we got, their comments, I was particularly interested in the roll-up in Hollywood and in the news. The news came out that Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air by ABC and ABC affiliate owners Nexstar. So that's Disney, which owns ABC, and then Nexstar and Sinclair, which own a bunch of the ABC affiliates. And they pressured to have the Federal Communications Commission under Trump pressured them ostensibly, and then they pressured Disney to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. And while the people we talked to didn't talk about that specific episode because it hadn't happened yet, they did talk about media consolidation writ large and what people can and should do about it and how they think about it from a structural level. So we want to share this with you. There are also a few other things that they talked about that I think are highly relevant to this current political moment. Dave, you have anything to add?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of people here. We've got Lina Khan, we've got a senator, we've got a couple members of the House. And I mean, the summit, which is put on by Matt's organization, the American Economic Liberties Project, was, a bringing together of people from a lot of different parts of the economy who are all seeing this kind of brick wall of consolidation. And, one of the themes, as usual at these conferences, is, the fear of speaking out, the chilling effect that it has. I did an event at the conference. I did of Cost Plus Drugs, which is Mark Cuban's company that's trying to lower costs of drug prices and deliver direct to consumer, basically eliminating the middlemen like the wholesalers and the pharmacy benefit managers. And the CEO of that company who talked to me for that was telling me about a whole host of ways wholesalers are trying to discourage drug manufacturers and hospitals from working with his company. And this is not, an independent sort of upstart with a dream. This is a billionaire's company. This is Mark Cuban's company. And even they have this trouble where if they try to disrupt the system, the incumbents, the powers that be, try to stop them from doing so. And so, we see this in media, we see this everywhere. And I think it was really interesting to hear from some folks about this dynamic specifically.
Yeah, so we have a number of people that we also talked, it was largely a left-leaning conference because the bipartisanship around anti-monopoly has mostly fallen apart. And it's not forever, but it is now. So we also asked them about what's wrong with the Democratic Party. And we asked some other questions that we thought were relevant. So here are some of what they thought about these questions about media consolidation, about fear, about why people should or shouldn't speak up, and then about, everyone's favorite punching bag, which is the Democrats.
It's organized money. Here it is.
We're here with Chris Murphy, Senator from Connecticut. Thanks for hanging out with us for a few minutes.
Yeah.
One thing we've been asking other Democrats is just sort of as a blanket thing. Obviously, everyone's seen the polls of where Democrats are standing right now. Why do you think that is, and how can that change?
Well, I think a lot of the reason the Democrats are down in the dumps is because people don't see us really fighting in the way that they want to save our democracy. And we have no obligation as a party to fund totalitarianism, which is what Republicans are asking us to do by continuing to, put Democratic votes on a budget that is increasingly eroding the rule of law. So, as a party, we've got to start showing some risk tolerance in terms of the tactics we use. We've got to be louder about fighting the corruption and naming the corruption than we are, or we're going to continue to bleed support even amongst our, most previously loyal followers.
On that point with the budget, you've been one of the few to say, I don't know that healthcare subsidies or everything is it. Like we have to talk about how can we do a budget deal with someone who has shown his eagerness to renege on budget deals. But what does that look like? Like how does that manifest itself? What are you asking for?
Yeah, listen, I don't want there to be a healthcare cataclysm this fall. I mean, people are going to have 75% rate increases in Connecticut, and I think we should try to abate that horror. But yeah, we're right now losing our democracy. And in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the potential that Trump is going to exploit that to try to shut down Democratic and progressive organizations and maybe arrest or jail more Democratic leaders, I think we have an even more serious obligation to say that if you want our votes for this budget, it's got to require the president to obey the law. Now, there's kind of an interesting question. The law already is clear that the president can't impound money. So how do you write super law? Well, you can make it easier for the courts to shut down some of his illegality, whether it's happening at the DOJ, the Department of Education, or just in terms of how he refuses to spend money. So yes, we could come to an agreement with Republicans that we are going to tighten the law around the requirement that the president spend the money that we allocate. And at the very least, that would make the court cases a little bit more likely to survive. And I just don't think we're credible if we're out there, talking about, just the issue of healthcare, which is important because let's face it, it would be a real disaster for the country if this campaign of retribution against his political opponents were to succeed, and he was doing it under a budget that Democrats had supported without any conditions.
Right. So, okay, so you're talking about, I think, a red line, which is jailing political opponents, right? Explicitly. Is that your red line? I mean, if you see that happening, is that where you're saying, okay, democracy is kind of lost?
Well, I would argue that we've already passed the red line. You've got a president who is, already using the Department of Justice to try to go after his political opponents. And as you know, the impact of that is not just on the named individual. That causes a lot of other people to just hold back in their criticism because they don't want to suffer the fate of somebody like Adam Schiff. He is going college by college, university by university, trying to make it harder for there to be loud protest. And then he is just decided to operationalize the regulatory infrastructure in order to get the business community to bend a knee. So I think we crossed the line. I'm not going to vote for this budget unless it has some provisions in it that slow his ability to act illegally. That red line for other people might be different.
Right. So let me take that point about purposing the regulatory space, right? Because we've seen this in antitrust, and we saw it with Skydance buying Paramount, and then lo and behold, Stephen Colbert loses his show, and CBS, this producer of 60 Minutes leaves, and sort of there's this, they pay a settlement to Trump personally. So there's this pervasive sense that these are unethical, perhaps unconstitutional use of government power to coerce the media into saying nice things about Trump.
That's the point, right? It's particularly in media, he's shown this
Right.
eagerness and willingness to prefer.
Okay, so here's a question. There is now this attempted merger, or they haven't confirmed they're going to do it, but the stocks have jumped, between Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, this merger is different than Skydance buying Paramount, because this would take 5 studios who do theatrical releases and turn it into 4, which means that it could be a violation of the Clayton Act, right? And that means that state attorneys general, some of whom are Democrats, could actually challenge it in court. Now,
In any state, including Connecticut.
Including in Connecticut. Now, you've tweeted about this merger, talked about it. Is this a leverage? Do you think that this is something that Democrats should take a look at? How do you think they should look at it? And then is this something that state attorneys general should actually try to stop, assuming that, we see the same purposing of the DOJ by the Trump administration to get benefits from this merger rather than to enforce the law?
Well, the short answer is yes. And frankly, any self-respecting attorney general, whether they're Republican or Democrat, should be looking at a merger this big that has such anti-competitive consequences for the market. But what is also very concerning here is that a major media asset, CNN, is at play. You have already seen what the buyers of Paramount, what these companies were willing to do to CBS News, sort of pushing CBS News's editorial content right, agreeing to a Trump-appointed kind of content monitor. Imagine what Trump will require happen at CNN. So yeah, I think we have to be laser-like focused on trying to prevent Trump's growing array of corruption, especially in the media space, because it's not just these more conventional legacy media companies. It's the question of what is going to be Trump's eventual demand of Meta in order to either. Meta's got a host of regulatory issues in front of the federal government right now, and obviously a small tweak in the algorithm on Instagram or on Facebook could fundamentally turn or throw any election. So I think especially in the media space and in the information platform space, we've got to use every lever at our disposal.
What would you say to people in Hollywood who are worried about these kinds of mergers, or this merger in particular, but are also afraid of retaliation in terms of speaking out?
Well, sure, but that's, I guess my case to them would be this, that you will regret on your deathbed remaining quiet when the question of democracy's survival was put to you because you wanted to make a little bit of extra money in the year 2025. Because if everybody decides to remain quiet, if every major corporation, if every college and university, if every sort of Hollywood big shot stays quiet, then we will lose our democracy. And I think everybody will come to rue the day that they decided to put their short-term financial interests ahead of the health of our country.
I feel like this is driving you too. Like, have you had this conversation with yourself internally that this is a moment to step up? This is a moment to be more vocal about specific issues around corruption, around democracy itself. Was there a sort of a moment where that clicked for you?
Well, listen, I spent a lot of the last couple of years, for whatever reason, studying and reading a lot of the new right, the folks, coming out of the Claremont Institute, et cetera. What you see there is a real antipathy for democracy growing, and this belief that sort of progressives are an existential threat to what is, at its core, a white Christian nation. And so it just wasn't surprising to me when right from the jump there was this purposeful campaign to try to transition the country away from democracy to something else. And so I've been alarmist from the beginning because I think that this is all predictable. I think it's real. And I think if we don't sort of model some courage inside the Senate, then how can we ask anybody in Hollywood or anybody at Harvard or anybody at some corporate board to model courage themselves?
And real quick, because it's being done, the things that you're talking about, in the name of freedom, that conservatives say we have to get back to a state of individual freedom in this country. The means by which they're doing that, I don't know that we'd agree with, right? But how do Democrats, how should you redefine that freedom? How do you see that argument? What is your conception of that?
Yeah, listen, there is, if you actually go back and read Adam Smith, right, he had a sense that government had to play a role in evening out the edges of the economy. He was not a believer in unfettered global trade. He really believed that the only way an economic system worked is if you had obligations to each other inside the domestic economy. I think Trump's corruption, just his brazen use of the office to benefit himself, has given us an opportunity to go speak to his base, to a lot of his base that is more economically populist, but more socially and culturally conservative. He's given us an opening to go talk to them about the ways in which we can give them more control over their economic lives. That's freedom, right? Waking up every day and knowing that the work that you put into the day is going to result in a better life for you or your family. And to get control over your life requires a government that controls and curbs corporate abuse and the consolidation of corporate power and delivers you the means to be powerful in your own political life. The free market, unregulated and unrestrained, doesn't actually give you the power that you need. It's a fair economy with a compassionate, thoughtful, and aggressive regulator that gives you the power and the control that you need. That's freedom.
Senator Chris Murphy, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we're here at the Antimonopoly Summit, and we're here with David Seligman, who is a workers' rights attorney who is also running for Attorney General of Colorado. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here.
You've been on the pod before, but we didn't actually know that you were running for anything when you came on. And now you are putting yourself out there. You're a politician now. And the question is, why do people hate the Democrats? And what can we do about it?
I think that fundamentally the Democrats haven't done enough to actually deliver for people and meaningfully deliver for people. I mean, something that I think about all the time, especially when I talk to working class folks across Colorado, is Democrats are running around talking about the rule of law and how we have to fight for the rule of law. Fundamentally, the law has been rigged against people for a really long time. When you can't ever hold your boss accountable, your landlord accountable, no one is there actually fighting for you. The laws that we have on the books are very often just words on a page. And Democrats across the country haven't done nearly enough to make sure that government is actually there to fight for people and deliver for them.
What would you say to people who feel a deep sense of despair at this moment?
I'll tell you, I had much more despair before I announced my campaign than I do now. The reason is because there are people all over the country, certainly in Colorado, who are actually ready for a different kind of politics and openly are eager for different kind of voices and a different kind of fight. And that makes me feel really optimistic that we're gonna have a chance, I think, especially in this cycle, if we can bust through a lot of the bullshit out there and break through on social media, to actually run different kind of campaigns and elect different kind of leaders.
Now, state attorneys general are important for a lot of reasons, but one of them that's near and dear to us is they can sue under the antitrust laws. There are abilities for state AGs to sue under the federal laws. When you think about that, and you think about the cases that are kind of in limbo right now, some of which Colorado has signed on to, when you think about mergers that are out there, there's a long cycle on mergers. So you may be, if you're fortunate enough to be elected, you may be in office when having to make decisions on those. What is your standard in terms of that? And what do you think needs to be done by state AGs in this moment where the Trump administration has kind of walked off the field on antitrust?
I mean, state AGs have to be the tip of the spear and not only carry on a lot of the frameworks and the fights from the Biden administration, but actually build out new frameworks and attack the consolidation of power as aggressively as we ever have before. Now, there are for sure resource limitations there, and that's why we're going to have to think creatively and boldly about how to address those limitations. That includes partnering across state AG's offices. That includes partnering with private counsel to expand the resources of state level enforcement, because for the next several years, in order to attack, I think, the most important fights that we're going to see across the marketplace, state AGs are going to have to be the ones doing it, and we got to do everything we can to make sure that happens.
I like you said there. You got to be the tip of the spear. You got to be the spear. The whole thing.
Yeah.
Forget the tip.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the spear.
That's right.
So there's a lot of mergers that are taking place right now. You got to pick and choose. I want to ask you about one specific merger, which is the Paramount Warner Discovery merger, which involves both Hollywood, right? Because you're taking two major film studios out of five and combining them. But it also involves some very dangerous politics because Warner Brothers owns CNN and the Paramount is now owned by Larry Ellison or David Ellison, which is his son, who's a close ally of Donald Trump. When you look, you would have jurisdiction as the Colorado Attorney General to look at mergers like that. How do you think about a merger of that kind of consolidation of power?
I think that this merger seems egregious in all kinds of ways. That I think that people who don't have any familiarity with antitrust would understand, right? So we're talking about effectively CBS and CNN coming together under one company. Incidentally, a company that seems eager to sort of participate in the Republican Party playbook, right? To exercise MAGA control over those media companies. But like we're talking about two of the biggest players in media, and I think that it's the first and fourth largest studios in Hollywood. I think that
This year's box office, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, that's right.
Yeah.
It changes
Disney
every year
historically
depending
is
on-
higher, but yes.
It changes depending on
And
the
it's-
year, if someone has a big hit. Or
and it's
this
also-
year it is first and fourth.
It's also the fourth and fifth largest streaming companies in
Okay, yeah.
in the country.
So we could likely see streaming costs go up if this merger happens. The bargaining power for writers, for actors, for others in Hollywood will be substantially eroded. And then I think, and this goes to your point about like how we prioritize these things. No one is going to do anything about that at the federal level. Like that much is abundantly clear. And especially in those kinds of cases, I think it's really important that states are there to take on the fight.
Well, they're not just not going to do anything. They're going to work against you. They're going to affirmatively say, no, this merger is fine. And then in court, if you were to bring a case, and I'm not saying you will, but I'm saying if you thought this was illegal and you did investigation and you read Larry Ellison's email, and you were like, yeah, this is a problem, the other side would say, no, this is great. And the federal government even thinks it's great. And the judge you'd have to prove to the judge that not only is this merger illegal, but the federal government is wrong. How do you do that?
These are the fights that states are in all the time. And increasingly, I think over time, we're going to start to see how that these fights arise, not just in litigation between the states and the federal government, but in cases where the federal government tries to weigh in on the side of corporate power. I think that's not just going to happen in antitrust cases. It'll happen in cases seeking to enforce the environmental protection laws, workers' laws, consumer protection laws. Like clearly,
But we don't care about it anymore.
No. No, but actually, and that's the last question I actually wanted to ask, is that we've seen this incredible kind of movement towards using the antitrust laws to talk about workers. You just talked about the ability for professionals in the entertainment industry to make a living and having better bids. How do you see, as a workers' rights attorney who's also concerned about these power issues, your role and what you can do as an AG in tackling some of these issues that really harm workers?
well, so first of all, I mean, we have to use like all the tools in the toolbox in order to take on these problems. Working people feel the squeeze everywhere. That you can't afford to live near where you work in Colorado. You got weird, creepy robot bosses that are controlling you via a hidden algorithm. And very often, your ability, and we can't lose track of this, the ability of working people to take on those fights has been stripped from them through the fine print of their contracts, including through forced arbitration clauses. Those kinds of impediments to private enforcement, to the ability of people to fight back, those don't apply to state attorneys general. So yeah, this is got to be the highest priority. And I'll say that this is an area, again, to the question from earlier. The Biden administration started to make real headway in reshaping the way that we think about how the anti-monopoly laws can be there to protect workers and small businesses. And I think it's going to be essential that states carry forward those efforts and build out new frameworks and new fights in order to maintain them. Like we need to we need to like maintain these fights in the diaspora, and we're doing the best we can in the diaspora, and we need to build out even more.
Stop saying dinosaur. All right.
Let's talk about the Talmud.
David Seligman, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Good luck to you. Hey, it's Dave. We love doing Organized Money, and we love the support that we get from our listeners. Rockcrete Sound is a fantastic production company, and they help us make this sound great for you guys. And if you go to organizedmoney.fm and help us out with some financial support, we can keep doing this show, and that's what we want to do. So we appreciate it, and we hope that you can go visit us at organizedmoney.fm and help us out with a donation.
So we're here with Lina Khan. You just gave a speech at the Antimonopoly Summit, and it's a moment of despair, I think would be fair to say. So what's your message to people in general about who are just saying there's nothing we can do to fight back against what seems like an overwhelming onslaught?
I mean, I totally get the despair. The level of backsliding and grift at the federal level is truly disturbing. I think one sign of hope or area where we could see some action is from state attorneys general. These are people who can enforce many of the same laws that agencies like the FTC did. And we've seen that in key instances when federal enforcers have been asleep at the wheel, state AGs can step out and challenge mergers, sue corporations for breaking the law, or take other forms of action that can fill that key void.
So I don't want to speak, well, we'll talk about specific mergers in a second, but you worked with, say, state attorneys general in the Kroger-Albertsons merger case, right?
Yes.
And what happened there there were some separate state trials, right?
That's right. So, the FTC sued along with a whole coalition of states, including Arizona and Nevada, but Washington State and Colorado State sued separately. And they sued separately, and those trials proceeded separately. So they were even less dependent on the FTC, the federal lawsuit, than the other state AGs.
Okay, so speaking to a merger, which I don't know if you've examined it in detail, I'll assume you haven't, but let's talk about Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery, which is, I think, very politically sensitive. It involves, CNN. It involves a whole bunch of news channels. It also involves taking 5 of the major studios that do theatrical releases, which used to be 6 just a few years ago, turning it into 4. You could see, it is possible for state attorneys general to address that if the Trump administration doesn't.
Absolutely. The states could investigate it, and they could ultimately sue to block that merger if they determine it breaks the law.
So you did a bunch of listening sessions at the FTC. What did you hear particularly from creators in Hollywood? And then are there analogies to other sectors of the economy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of the concerns from creators in Hollywood stem from the combination that we've seen of a lot of horizontal consolidation coupled now with vertical integration. And at the end of the day, they said what that means is that if you are a creator, doesn't matter if you're a director, if you're a film writer, if you're an actor, you just have fewer places for your labor. That practically means that a smaller and smaller number of entities get to pick whether you get to be in business, whether you get to make a living. And there are a whole set of harms that stem from that. There are material consequences, like other people make less money because of this consolidation. But it also means that you're really consolidating and narrowing the number of people, literally, that are deciding what type of art and creation do Americans get access to? What gets funded, what doesn't get funded? And there's just a general sense of precarity that has emerged because of this combination of consolidation and vertical integration.
I noticed that one of the merger guidelines, the 2023 merger guidelines that you helped author, which is really a characterization of what the law is. It's not like an ideological statement. I think it was 10 or 11 talked about mergers that put pressure on workers, creators, suppliers, that kind of thing.
That's right. This is a part of the market that has been neglected for many decades, but mergers can be blocked if they are making things worse for customers because of a declining competition, but also if they're making things worse for workers or suppliers of a product because of that decline in competition. The FTC's lawsuit against Kroger was brought in part because we alleged it would make things worse for unionized workers. The DOJ lawsuit against Simon & Schuster and that big publisher merger was brought in part because they said it would make things worse for authors who would have fewer places to sell their books, and that would let publishers diminish how much those authors get paid.
Okay, last question, because I know you have to run, and thank you so much for doing this. You mentioned the Paramount Warner Brothers merger, which I think is a particularly significant one. It involves media. Media's always been sort of a special industry in many ways. There's a lot of people in Hollywood who, in my experience, are pretty discouraged, right? And I'll just get back to the despair, and are wondering whether to speak out about it, right? Because there is a fear of retaliation, especially in a more consolidated industry. What would you say to them? Is it worth speaking out? Is it worth saying that if they think this merger is illegal, would reduce their bargaining power, would cause problems in the market? Why should they speak out?
Well, look, I think the only shot there is at stopping this merger, if it is in fact illegal, is if people speak out. Law enforcers are incredibly dependent on market participants to help make the case for what a merger would do, what its effects would be. I fully understand the fears of retaliation, and there can be ways to think about, is there a way to shield against that? I think especially if creators are able to find a trusted partner in Congress or a state AG who can be, a receptacle for a lot of those concerns, that would be incredibly powerful. I think even, Hollywood putting on some type of listening session, just encouraging people to show up and share what they think about this merger would be enormously helpful.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt.
Welcome, Congresswoman. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Congresswoman Becca Balint. I represent the state of Vermont. We only get one member of Congress in the House. I'm it. And I serve on the Judiciary Committee and the Antitrust Subcommittee. And I'm also the leader of the Monopolies Corporate Greed Task Force within the CPC, the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Okay, so this is like a basic thing on the mind, I think, of Democrats writ large, but I think it's broader than that. What do you say about people who feel in despair at this moment?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. So look, we don't have a choice except to fight. And I would rather be a happy warrior that's throwing punches when I need to, throwing elbows when I need to, but not exist in a place of rage and despair, because my constituents need me to be sharp focused, and rage is a creativity killer. Anxiety is a creativity killer. And so I let myself feel those things in moments, but I don't let them consume me. And I did a series of Instagram posts a couple weeks ago. It was 5 days, 5 tips for dealing with your rage and despair. And just to give people that peek behind the curtain of, I deal with this too, and it's a practice. It's a practice not to give into it. And we know that the Trump administration is using the flood the zone, the overwhelmed, so that we will be despairing and that we will yield. We will just let things happen to us.
Okay. Well, sort of piggybacking off of that broader question, the Democratic Party the brand is in the toilet.
Yeah.
I think in general, people don't like the Democrats. Democrats don't like the Democrats.
Yes.
Why, and what do you do about it?
Yeah, I love this question. I think about it all the time. Yeah, our brand is terrible. And I think that one of the pieces that I've been teasing out and really thinking deeply about and changing the way that I'm showing up is about language. I alluded to it in this panel. But look, 52% of the American public reads at a 5th or 6th grade reading level. Another big swath reads at about a 7th or 8th grade reading level. And we can debate how awful that is and what we need to do about it. But in this moment, that's what we've got. So we need to be clear communicators. We need to stop doing in-group, out-group all the time in the kind of language that we're using. And we can't show up as the smartest people in the room. We may think we are, but that's an inside thought, as I used to say when I was a teacher. You have to really sit and be willing to listen to someone telling you your brand is crap, you're not listening to what we're saying, and have humility to say, okay, I'm going to learn from this conversation and not get defensive.
I mean, I can assure you the Democrats are not the smartest people in the room, right? I mean, my experience is,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that
But I'm saying that is the mentality.
Yeah,
right?
that's
yes,
right,
that's
that's
what I mean.
right.
That's the mentality. Not to be saying that we are. That's not at all my point. Yeah.
like there's a cosplay at work. Like people pretend to be wonks. They're like, if we use big words,
Yes.
then we're smarter. And you're just like, no, you're just fucking annoying. And you're actually confusing things. You're this confused
You are
thoughts.
confusing things.
Right.
You are confusing things. And, so I was at an event a couple months ago and I was talking about this issue of how I want to be as clear and as direct and as accessible as I can be, because in Congress, everything's a math problem. Do you have the votes or do you not? And so it is difficult sometimes for people within our base to understand that if they continue to cleave off members of our coalition, there's no coalition left, right? So I had somebody say to me the other day, well, we can't be chasing disaffected white males. We can't be chasing machismo Latinos. We can't be, I was like, you guys, you are literally cleaving off people who used to believe we stood up for the working people. They used to believe that. They voted Democratic because they believe that. So how is it that we're going to bring that trust back? It's not by saying we're not going to listen anymore. It's not by saying, we're going to use language that creates an in-group, out-group all the time. I'll just give you a quick example because this is the kind of thing that I'm thinking about. If you have a group that is working to end homelessness in your community, okay? And you show up, and this is a story. I'm telling you a story that a young man told me. He showed up. He wanted to work on homelessness in his community. He cared deeply about it. Within the first half hour, somebody made him feel like he didn't belong there because he was using the word homeless instead of unhoused. I have heard this from people when they're trying to do issues related to addiction, that if they're not saying the words exactly right, oh, you're on the outs, you're not part of this coalition. We are casting people out so easily because of language issues, and it's killing us. And I'm done with it.
Right.
And I'm a queer woman. I'm a queer woman that hangs out in lots of spaces where there's a lot of lingo, and I keep telling people, enough with the lingo. Just talk as if you really care deeply about what this other person is bringing to the conversation.
So corporate power.
Yeah.
Okay, corporate power is kind of like a core thing. It's like a 90-10 issue. And the 10% of people who support it don't support it. They're just like, there's nothing we can do, right?
Yes.
But it's also something that kind of isn't central to the Democratic Party. It's like, there's like a lot of hand waving. Yeah, I care about that. And then they just go off and do the thing they really care about, which is, whatever it is, seating charts or however you want to think about it. But let's talk about something that's in the news now, which is last week there was a proposed merger by Paramount to buy, which is now owned by one of Donald Trump's allies, the richest man in the world, Larry Ellison of Oracle, for his son David Ellison. And those were the guys that got rid of Stephen Colbert. Those were the guys that put a conservative minder in charge of CBS News and 60 Minutes and did a whole bunch of, did a personal settlement with Donald Trump. And now Paramount said that they want to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, which is, one of the other major Hollywood studios. They own CNN. It's an important media conglomerate. It'd be a multi-billion-dollar purchase.
Yes.
Now, that one looks like a competition problem, as well as something that is deeply concerning. How do you think about mergers like that when you hear something like that going on?
Right. When you have an instance like this where you have a studio purchasing another studio, certainly there's a case to be made, it is eliminating choice, but more broadly, what it's doing is it is narrowing the information that we have access to as Americans, whether it's through CNN, whether it's through the kind of, whether it's movies, whether it's TV shows, what is being produced. I think we're seeing this great narrowing of ideas. And I think that people don't realize this is happening until it's too late. And so I do think.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, let me. So I think you're right that certainly there's a sort of fear there's a lack of recognition. But I want to bring the perspective of people in Hollywood, right?
Yes,
so the creatives, so the artists, the cameramen, the writers, directors, actors, so on.
Yes.
Now they know exactly what's going on. They understand. All right, I used to have 5 studios I could pitch to. Now I have 4.
That's right.
They go to theatrical releases and whatnot. The terms are getting worse and worse and worse.
Exactly.
But they're afraid, right? Because you have 5 you could pitch to. Now you're going to have 4. If you speak out, do you really want to anger those 4, right? So there's a fear of retaliation. And then, of course, you have layered onto that, these are Trump-aligned companies.
Yes.
So there's fear. Now, what would you say to someone in Hollywood, big shot agent or a lowly paid actor, whatever, whoever it is, who is thinking about speaking out but is afraid?
Yeah. Obviously, there is risk involved. That is why this has such a chilling effect. But when we allow it to happen and we don't band together to speak up, then nothing will happen. It isn't right. It will be a fait accompli if you are not engaged in bringing that coalition together of writers, of producers, of creatives of all kinds. It's not as if you're going to escape it. That's the piece I keep telling people. You're not going to outrun this. You're not going to escape it. So your choice is to be consumed by it, or are you going to fight? Are you going to fight and possibly break the machine? I mean, that's it. I said this to our institutions of higher ed when they're like, well, we're just going to keep our heads down and we're just going to we're not going to be in the crosshairs. I'm like, everyone's going to be in the crosshairs. That's what this man is about. That is what this machine is about that he has built within the White House. It is always going to go after you. So you might as well fight.
Okay, so from your perch on the Antitrust Subcommittee,
Yeah.
and you are my favorite member on the Antitrust.
Oh, that's very kind.
We've never met before, but I very much appreciate your work. It is the perch or one perch in Congress from which you can just sort of do some things on antitrust. What do you think about, the fact that the Department of Justice Antitrust Division has sort of been defanged in certain ways, but state attorneys general can actually do something about these kinds of mergers? Is that the kind of thing that you would encourage?
100%. We have to take our wins where I can. It's going to be some, hand combat in the states. I want to bring those people in. That's the other thing. People have this despair because they don't think anything is happening in the states. Bring these attorneys general in. Have them in front of a shadow hearing with the cameras and just lay it out for us. What are the stakes? Why is it the states have to do this? And why is it the federal government is not doing this?
So
we are not using our ability to highlight these issues, even while in the minority.
So that's from your perspective as you're talking about a shadow hearing. Would that be from the Progressive Caucus, monopoly piece, or from ranking member?
I'm saying from our side of the aisle during this time when we don't have the gavel.
And bring in Stephen Colbert or someone like that.
Yes!
Whoever would come, right? Yeah.
I mean, look, this is the other thing Democrats are terrible at. I need you to shine. I need you to be a distraction so you can get some press here. It sucks that this is the moment that we're in, but we have to use Stephen Colbert, use the attorneys general that are getting traction, bring them in. We are not people that understand how to manipulate the moment in terms of the social media and the coverage. And we think that if we just make the best case, that somehow it's going to be covered. It's not.
Listen, appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
And thank you for coming into this conference, but also thank you for taping with Organized Money.
My pleasure. Really appreciate it.
And now this is from the conference. I did a fireside chat with Alex Oshmyansky, and he is the CEO of Cost Plus Drugs, which is a company that sells direct-to-consumer drugs at a lower cost. So my first question, Alex, is, tell me about the origins of this business and why you wanted to take on the pharmaceutical supply chain in particular, because you were a doctor, right? You're a radiologist. Tell me why. What are the origins of this?
Oh, sure. So I sort of consider myself the George Costanza of kind of the pharma industry, not just the hair, but just a generally cranky person. And do you guys remember this character, Martin Shkreli, the pharma bro? Yeah, actually it was 10 years ago this month that all this started. But But yeah, so for those of you who don't remember, he was a young hedge fund manager who bought the rights to a generic drug off patent, but there was only one manufacturer that made it. And he raised the price of that drug from, I think it was like $10 a tablet to like $700 a tablet. Even $10 is kind of outrageous, but is what it is. And yeah, he had sort of a, histrionic, antisocial personality. Don't know how to describe it, but he kind of reveled in being the bad guy, and he became the social media kind of villain of the week.
Martin Shkreli gained infamy raising the price of an AIDS drug 5,000%.
Are you going to change the price?
No.
Becoming the CEO Americans love to hate.
And yeah, I got mad at it like a lot of people and decided with all due naivete, got together with some infectious disease doctor friends of mine and were like, we're going to start our own pharmaceutical company. We're going to make the
late night session. Just
yeah. Like, oh, we're going to do it.
Do it, man.
Yeah.
Take them on.
And we did it.
And then you cold pitched Mark Cuban. Are you aware he had a television show where you could just pitch him?
Yeah, this ain't getting on TV. That's not going to happen.
But tell me about that. I mean, you literally just emailed him, right?
Just kind of on a whim. Worst you could say is no or ignore. Right. And yeah, mcuban@gmail.com. Seriously.
We are doxing here today.
He is so manic on email. If you email him now and say, Alex sounds like an idiot, he will respond before the end of this and be like, yeah, that tracks.
So the selling point, I think, of cost plus drugs is really transparency, right? And is that the core problem in this market that you see? And how do you try to overturn that?
Yeah, it's really easy to get lost in kind of the weeds and, there are these specialty pharmacies and group purchasing organizations and virtual manufacturers in the Caribbean. And yeah, at the end of the day, the problem is, I try to avoid getting stuck too much in that because the problem is really simple. There's a cartel of companies that buy all the drugs in America. They're a double-sided monopoly, a monopsony. They have complete purchasing power over all the drugs. They have complete selling power over all the drugs. So they can command an extremely low price for the drugs. Trump put out his MFN or EO for MFN pricing. My conspiracy theory is we're already getting MFN pricing in the United States through the big purchasing conglomerates. They're just allowed to mark up the cost as much as they want on the other side. So yeah, a lot of the scams are basically pulled off with this model where there's a artificial fake high list price. There's a real price somewhere underneath, and it's the job of the intermediary companies to arbitrage the delta as much as they possibly can. And yeah, basically our analytics show it roughly on average doubles the cost of the drugs before they get sold on. And yeah, there's this famous Rand Corporation statistic that the average price of pharmaceuticals in the U.S. is 2.56 times more than any other comparable nation. And we're really the only nation which allows PBMs to operate at any scale. I don't think the two are unrelated.
So what you do is you purchase direct. I mean, this is part of the business. You have several sides to the business, but you purchase direct from a manufacturer. You add a markup. You add a filling fee. You add some inner shipping because it's a mail order thing, and then you just publish the price, and anybody can take a look at it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I think we're still the only company in healthcare that does that. Correct me if I'm wrong, preferably after the talk. But yeah, you can go to our website and you can see the actual price we purchased the pharmaceuticals at.
Right.
And there has been study after study academic studies, private consultancies that show that with that model of just revealing the price you purchase it at, it saves approximately 50 to 60% on overall generic drug spend.
Right. And I did this for drugs that I take because I'm a very sick man. And I looked on your website. I had two prescriptions that I take. One of them was $13 and the other was something like $20 for a several month supply, which is great and much lower than what I would buy if I was just going to the counter by myself. But it is less than it is a little bit more than my copay. And so to me, this is really about getting people who are underinsured or uninsured the ability to access these medications, and then to take this sort of guesswork out of it in terms of, well, if I'm only paying a small copay, where's the rest of that money going? How am I paying for it eventually?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the group of people we help most now. So every day we get, and this is what we do it all for, we get countless messages from people who are saying, I have a high deductible plan, and I was going to have to pay, $3,000 a month for my chemotherapy until I hit my deductible. And I don't have $3,000. We get letters, I was skipping meals. I thought I'd have to sell my house to afford this medication. I just thought I was going to die because I couldn't get I don't have $3,000. And if you look on our website, for a lot of these drugs, our cost is $30.
Right.
So, in my mind, this is just criminal.
Right.
Like, if you are causing people to suffer this severely over a $30 medication, I mean, that's nuts. But more broadly, I think there was a study done that said, compared to like a $10, $15, people with like a reasonable copayment or deductible were still cheaper 10 to 15% of the time.
Right.
Which, okay, that doesn't sound like a lot, but isn't that crazy on its face?
Right.
You're in a membership club, effectively, where they say if you pay us $400 a month, we'll get you a discount.
Right.
And that doesn't always work out.
Right.
And, what we're trying to do in the background, and Mark Cuban takes the lead on a lot of this directly, is negotiate with Fortune 500 companies and say, look at our pricing model, because you are paying twice what you should.
Because a lot of those companies are self-insured, essentially.
Yeah.
They're paying for the health insurance on their own. So
Yeah, that's exactly.
savings would accrue to them.
Yeah, both large self-insured employers as well as regional health plans as well. A lot of them view themselves as having to pay a tax to the big national plans, effectively for access to pharmaceutical pricing.
Right. Now, how many medications are on the site currently?
So it depends how you count it. It's about 2,000 or to 2,500 unique molecules. So we pretty much cover every generic medication at this point.
And
right.
That's one thing that's interesting here, because how have PBMs reacted to what you're doing?
Yeah, they've effectively tried to block us out of the market for brand drugs.
Imagine that.
Funny story.
Yeah.
So when we initially started, even with generics, we built out our own manufacturing in part with the mindset that no company would be willing to work with us. We didn't think even the generic companies would. And we found one product, albendazole. We still can't say the name of the company that partnered with us on that. They prefer not to. But we private labeled it. We put our own company branding on it. And came out. It was one of these ultra high cost specialty generics that's, I think it was like $500 for 2 pills through your conventional insurance and closer to $13 for those same 2 pills from us. A full course of treatment for that particular drug was 2 pills. But yeah, and that wound up being a big success. So we got 3 other big generic companies to sell 100 products through us. And that's what really blew up cost plus drugs. But, and they told us they got calls, they got pulled into rooms by the big wholesalers saying, if you do business with Cost Plus, we're going to pull you from our formularies. And God bless those guys. They stuck by us. They kind of said, you're a paper tiger. You need us more than we need you. And now we do business with pretty much every major generic manufacturer. The top 40 manufacturers, I think we do business with like 38 of them.
It's very interesting that every incumbent in this market said, don't work with them.
Yeah. And now the same thing is happening, though, with the major PBMs and branded pharmaceutical companies.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we're told behind closed doors that the PBMs are threatening us that if you do business with Cost Plus, we will pull your products from our formulary positioning. And thus, we're not able to get access to the branded.
The formulary, to be clear, is the list of drugs that they will insure.
Yeah.
So if you're on a plan that uses a PBM like Caremark, CVS or whatever, and they say you're not on the formulary, then you're on.
Yeah, I think Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk both have their own GLP-1 drug.
Right.
So CVS, one of the big PBMs may say, "Oh, Lilly, that's a nice GLP-1 you have. A shame if nobody would buy it. We can just go to Novo. You did business with Cost Plus. Sorry about that."
It's very gangster. And And the whole, it's interesting that you say the wholesalers play a role in this too, because that is also, PBMs are a very concentrated market, 3 companies, maybe 85% of the pharmaceutical transactions. But wholesalers also a very concentrated market, and how do they contribute to these problems in the supply chain?
Oh yeah. So forgive me. This starts to get more into weeds. So bear with me. But
This is a weedy audience.
All right, Substacks. I love it. Yeah, they have this concept of generic compliancy ratios.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically say, unless you do 90% of your business with us, we won't allow you. We won't allow you access to branded pharmaceuticals. So the big wholesalers typically make most of their margin on generic drugs. They mark them up a substantial amount, generally double the cost. And they say, independent pharmacy, if you don't purchase your generics through us, we won't give you access to the brand name drugs. And because they dominate the market, generally they're the only ones with access to the brand name drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually have a part of our company, Cost Plus Marketplace, which is a wholesaler to enable other smaller pharmacies to get access to the same drugs we have at our exact same price,
right,
or as close to it as we can get. What pharmacies tell us is, we'd like to purchase more from you. It's at a lower cost. But if we do, we run against these generic compliance.
It's the same thing over and over again here. We're not allowed to
because they're the exclusive holders of these branded drugs. They can set the list price, which then gets rebated down.
Right.
So without this sort of monopoly of wholesalers, which set this arbitrarily high list price, this so-called WAC, wholesale acquisition cost price, the PBMs wouldn't be able to play this arbitrage game. So they kind of work hand in hand and have joint ventures together. So it's all incestuous.
So you have a pharmacy business, you have a wholesaler business, and there was talk of a manufacturing business, right? You were planning on a sterile injectable plant, I think?
And that is up and running.
It's up and running.
Yeah, we got audited by the FDA that last fall, and we passed. That was intense, 2 weeks. Oof.
And that is to deal with, some of these are drugs that go to hospitals primarily,
Yeah.
right?
So working very much on issues of pharmaceutical drug shortages.
Yeah.
So the wholesalers as well, because they're a double-sided monopoly, they create a very brittle supply chain. Because let's say there are 14 manufacturers that can make a drug, there's only 3 wholesalers. So if you don't get one of those contracts, there's no point staying in business. So you wind up with this situation where something will break on one of the 3 winners' lines. Suddenly a third of the market supply goes away. The price of the drug spikes. And then, sort of the cycle occurs where the other 14 players suddenly or 11 players realize, hey, we can go back in. The price is high again. Price goes down and the cycle repeats. And what we're trying to do is basically, sorry, I'm talking fast because I see that we have 59 seconds left.
It's all right.
But we try to come in at that sort of peak price and say, hey, we've developed these robotic AI-driven technologies that can pivot from making one drug type to another very rapidly. In principle, within 4 hours, we use a combination of technologies, gloveless isolators with internal robotic components that are periodically sterilized by vaporized hydrogen peroxide, single-use disposable flow paths we can swap in and out, machine vision systems. And basically, if lidocaine is in shortage today, we can make that. If potassium chloride is in shortage tomorrow, we can make that. And we recently got a grant from the Department of Defense to expand this capacity. Because right now, the large majority of U.S. pharmaceuticals, especially the active ingredients, are generally made in China, which is a geostrategic vulnerability along the lines of rare earth minerals. So we've got a lot going on.
But again, I mean, that's a situation where the hospitals have to be able and willing to take those drugs. And there are group purchasing organizations that also restrict what kinds of products can be purchased by a hospital. So
and even the Department of Defense itself, they are sponsoring us to make drugs for them. And they have a prime vendor agreement with one of the big wholesalers that's blocking us from selling drugs at a lower cost to the VA.
All right. So, and we're at 000, but I got one more question. You're working through the marketplace, providing a product that is of lower cost and obviously the quality in terms of what you're being able to do in the manufacturing, but you're running up against these barriers over and over and over again. So we're seeing interventions. Lina mentioned it at the state level, at the local level, on PBMs. on other parts of this market. What kind of reforms are needed so that you can run a business and in a way that you're not constantly running into these hurdles from the incumbents?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is one, true transparency would be great, true net cost transparency, but that's so hard to get at between all of these sort of shell organizations. Like if the PBM owns a virtual manufacturer that it buys from after, buys a drug at $300, marks it up to $1,300, puts its own label on it at a manufacturer. But ultimately, if we can strip away control of the formulary from the pharmacy benefit managers, because right now they get to pick. The nation of Lithuania with 3 million people gets considerably better pharmaceutical pricing than we do. Our negotiators, the big PBMs, each negotiate on behalf of 100 million people, and our costs are 2.5 times higher.
Right.
Either our negotiators are terrible at their job,
right,
or they're not acting in our best interest. And obviously, from my tone, you can kind of tell where I land on that.
Well,
but if we can strip away their negotiating leverage from that and move that on to state or other actors, I think we'd be in a much better position.
Great. Well, Dr. Alice Oshmyansky, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you for your time.
So this conference is my organization's conference. This is our third one, right? And it's the first one in the Trump era. So the first two were happening when there was a lot of really interesting antitrust work that was being done by our allies. Right. And so they were really fun and optimistic, and people thought, okay, this is kind of kick-ass. And there were, and this is not your standard political conference. We had dentists there, and we had pharmacists there. We had doctors. We gave an award to Dr. Potter, who was fighting against United Health Group, and she gave these incredibly inspirational speech. We had, technologists there, and there was
independent venue owners and people in the farm system, and
convenience store people, and it's not. And then you had labor people, and then you also had progressives, but it was very much kind of business people and labor people and policymakers trying to understand what to do. And I think, it is the general vibe is that it's a grim time, right? And people feel a sense of despair. But also they want to fight, right? They feel like America is under attack. And by being under attack, what I mean is they feel that the way of life that allows somebody to run a business or work for someone else and do their work and gain the fruits of their own labor and sort of control their own destiny is being undermined by dominant firms and arbitrary coercions of power. And they saw some hope over the past 2 years that the government was trying to address that. And I think they see less hope now, and we're trying to figure out what to do.
But I think the one thing that I took away is that people are more, even though there were a lot of federal officers there, obviously, people from Congress, from the Senate, from the House, there was a lot of interest in moving to the state and local level and trying to continue these fights with whether it's state attorney generals or even local fights around, Live Nation coming into your town or a data center or things like that. I think there is an effort and an interest and an eagerness to keep these fights moving. A lot of people who came out of Lina Khan's FTC, who came out of Jonathan Cantor's DOJ, are starting public interest law firms and participating in these fights at the state and local level, whether it's around electricity or whether it's around any other number of things. So I think there's good options there.
Health insurance is going to be a nightmare for, I think, everyone, and that's a huge political opportunity. But I think the other dynamic, as you're mentioning it, that people are wrestling with, which is really hopeful, is there were candidates there, right, who they were not coming as candidates. They were coming as usually office holders or just people who came and showed up, and there were students. But they were trying to figure out, all right, how do I take this stuff and talk to voters about it, right? And that's a different, that really didn't happen a lot, I think, over the last couple of years. It was mostly like sliding in under the Biden framework, and Biden being this guy who was just sort of I'm going to restore the soul of America, like whatever the fuck that means. And then, we got some antitrust in there, but it's not like anybody said this is going to be, the antitrust administration, which it wasn't. They did some antitrust, more than we've seen in decades. But I think people are trying to say, okay, this actually has to go to voters, and voters have to be able to make decisions on this. And so we're seeing that starting in what I think is a real way. Although how big it's going to be is yet to be. I mean, I don't think we know yet.
Yeah. All right. Next week, we mentioned that at the conference there were some independent dentists there. We're going to have a dentist on to talk about consolidation in the dental industry, and that'll be next week on Organized Money.
Organized money.